Hey everybody, welcome to the videos where we're breaking down the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona International Speedway. This will take place on Saturday. Yes, Saturday, not Sunday. Hopefully you're not watching this video on Sunday, but Saturday night at 7 p.m. on August 28th, and this might be the most exciting race of the year. It's the one I've been looking forward to the most ever since the season began. It's the playoff cutoff race. We're at a super speedway. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be wrecks. We have drivers fighting for the final playoff spot. I mean, we're going to have pretty much everything thrown in here, and it's going to be absolutely awesome. Not only from a fan standpoint is this a fun race to watch, it's really fun for DFS as well. I mean, you can go to first place to last place in a matter of laps, and it just keeps changing the entire time, but it's going to be awesome. I will tell you right now, you cannot predict this race. I cannot predict this race. If anyone tells you they can, they're straight out lying to you. But what we can do is build lineups optimally according to a strategy that I use pretty much each and every single time that tends to work out. We'll go over that in a little bit. But if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. And if you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. There's a couple hundred people over there. I'd be more than happy to have you. I do want to announce that I can run a bit of a deal here since we're close to the end of the month. If you want this race weekend free, I'll be more than happy to hit that refund button for you if you do sign up and stay signed up on September 1st, which will have 3 sports going on: NASCAR, NFL, and MLB. So if you want to sign up, now's kind of the best time to do so you can get this last week free. And if you are using the optimizer this weekend, I am going to set up some tutorial videos on how I use the settings and rules within it so I can build lineups optimally for a super speedway. So I think that'll be pretty important this weekend. Last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions or anything like that, just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're a new signee over on PrizePicks, you can use code CPENN to get a free money bonus, instant deposit match up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. And as of right now, I am offering PrizePicks projections on my spreadsheet, which has a leverage score, and I'll go over some of my favorite plays in Discord in my article as well. I think that's it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into the preview of this week's video. As always, a couple things before we get started. So first off, the live stream this weekend. Since the race is on Saturday night, yes, not Sunday afternoon, Saturday night around 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm thinking we go live around 5. It's probably a good time. You guys can let me know down in the comments below what you prefer, but I'm thinking 5 o'clock is probably a good time to have it, so I'd plan on it being around that time. And then number 2, if you guys want to join the DraftKings contest that I host each and every single week, just a fun way for me to interact with you guys. You guys can win money, get prizes, shout-outs on the channel, and just have a fun time. All you gotta do is comment your DK username down below, and I'd be more than happy to send you that invite. But I do want to shout out the winners that we have like we do each and every single week, so I'll throw them on the screen right about now. And coming home in first place, taking the gold and over $130, I got my man Trey, who's like my 8th subscriber ever. He's been here forever, been in the Patreon, the Discord ever since the beginning, so always gotta give him a nice shout out. Congrats to Trey. Coming in second, silver medal, K Toga, 05, taking him over $80. And then coming in third place, taking him the bronze medal and over $50 to my dad, who's been a while since he's been on the podium. So it's nice to see him back. He was on a hot streak for quite some time early in the season. Kind of faded off, but nice to see him back on the podium, so I had to give him a nice shout out there. So shout out to my dad. Jeremy K92 right in the bubble. Holden McNeil in 5th. Barrett 2245 in 6th. And also in 6th, we have Vaz P 421. Mike Robin 8th. T Gully in 8th. And then rounding out the top 10, we have Kentrellians, who I know is in my Discord chat. So congrats to you all. You had fantastic lineups last weekend. I think that's it for the housekeeping for the most part. So let's get right into the preview of this week's race. As previously mentioned, this is the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona International Speedway. It's a 2.5 mile in length track. There's your outline of it. We have 160 miles on tap, which means we have about 100 Dominator points, give or take, available to us. I'm going to tell you right now, Dominator points don't mean really anything to me. Fast laps are completely random, so I'm not even trying to project those this week, which takes out nearly half the potential Dominator points out of my projection, so I really don't care about Dominators. Yes, there's some guys that come out, lead a lot of laps, and maybe they win the race, maybe not, but even then, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to be optimal, because there's going to be some guys starting in the 30s and 40s that gain like 20, 30 spots, and that's going to way outscore the guys that started up front and get like a top 5. So you got to keep that in mind. And for the most part, this is just purely a place differential race. And if you guys are on Twitter this week, you can see everyone talking about hashtag stack in the back, which I want to say I kind of started a couple years ago. I'm not sure if everyone stole that from me, but either way, I'm glad it's becoming a thing because it's true. You got to stack the back at these tracks. I'll show you guys some numbers to back it up. But I mean, we always have the big win at Daytona. It's just a matter of when. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's in the middle. Sometimes it's the end. Sometimes we have multiple of them, and we have like 10 cars remaining. Like Daytona is a very chaotic track. We're all in a big pack, drafting off of each other. One wrong move, one aggressive block can take out nearly half the field. And with this being the playoff cutoff race, there's going to be some guys doing some absolutely wild things. Maybe Austin Dillon, Tyler Reddick. So I mean, we're going to probably see a lot of wrecks here. So for the most part, we got to build ourselves a safe floor and get a high ceiling with rostering drivers that start near the back because they have the most upside and they're the safest as well. And my advice to you guys this weekend is don't get too up or down throughout the race. Nothing matters until the very last lap. You could be winning nothing, like losing all your money with 5 laps left. And then at the end, if there's a big wreck or something happens, you can win it all back, have a good day, maybe take down a contest. So just stay liquid throughout the race. Don't get too up or down. Just stay neutral. Wait till the end of the race. Last lap, nothing matters until after they complete the race. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind because it can be a very emotional experience if this is your first time playing NASCAR DFS and it's a super speedway. And one more thing strategy-wise, I do want to mention that do not be afraid to leave salary on the table. There's instances where I leave $20,000, $30,000 on the table when building lineups. And I'll show you guys some instances where that's actually been the case in the optimal lineup at Daytona. Like, if you have a lineup you like, you're probably doing it wrong. Ugly lineups typically do very well at Daytona. Just to use this lineup as an example, the salary used was $33,100 with MDB, Ty Dillon, Matt Tipped, Corey LaJoie, Justin Haley, JJ Yaley. Like, that is an extremely ugly lineup. If you were hand boating, you are probably never clicking on that unless you are nuts. So it's another good week to have an optimizer because sometimes hand boating these can be a little bit tough to do, but if you just look at the end results and your exposures, it's definitely a lot easier to like try to build better lineups in my opinion. But anyway, just like get some previous optimal lineups here to prove to you that place differential is the way to go and leaving money on the table. So the most recent race, Daytona 500, 4 guys in the back. Before that, we had 3 guys in the back, then 5 guys in the back, then 5 again, then 5 again. And if we're looking at the end results here for the past 6 races, about a half a driver starting 1 through 12, almost 1 driver starting 13 through 24, and then 4.5 drivers starting in the very back with a lot of money left on the table as well. So if that doesn't get my point across, I'm not really sure what will. There's a bunch of other data points I can show you that I have on my spreadsheet. I'll talk about in the article, but I'll leave that for the Patreon members. But I think without further ado, we can probably get into the driver-by-driver breakdown portion of this video. If you want my overall thoughts on the pricing this weekend, nothing matters, so I don't really have any thoughts. Although I do want to mention, whoever priced David Starr above Ricky Stenhouse, like I get it, he's starting in last place, but it's David Starr. Whoever did this needs to be jailed immediately. Like this, there is no excuse for that. I don't care how far back he's starting. Ricky Stenhouse is one of the best drivers of super speedways, and I know he's starting 12th, but David Starr should never be more expensive than Ricky Stenhouse and Michael McDowell. Like I just won the Daytona 500, and you have David Starr priced more than him. Like, what is going on here? Someone needs punished. I'm not sure who it is, but it's inexcusable. Anyway, starting up in this 10K range, we have Joey Logano, $10,600. He's starting back in 22nd, which does make him a pretty interesting play for tournaments. I wouldn't say he's a lock for cash games because it's not like he's starting in the very, very back where he has no downside. If he wrecks out, he's still going to get you negative points. Meanwhile, guys like Gralla, Landon Castle, Corey LaJoie really don't offer you too much downside whatsoever. Plus, they're really not going to be racing for a win. So, I mean, they're kind of locked in for positive PED. Meanwhile, Joey Logano does have a history of wrecking at super speedways. Now, he's one of the best drivers at them. I mean, Daytona, he's great at. Talladega is great at. One of the best running positions of all drivers. The Penske cars tend to run very, very well. And not be surprised if they form a train and are like 1st through 4th for a while during this race, taking turn leading laps. And Joey should definitely be a contender for that, and he could certainly win the race. And if he wins the race during the 22nd, yeah, he'll be in the optimal lineup. I'm just a little bit concerned because he's one of those guys that just tends to get caught up in wrecks. I mean, he throws pretty aggressive blocks, and you know, Joey's just known for that kind of thing. So don't be surprised if he happens to wreck out of this race. I mean, Talladega recently finished 39th, then 12th, 26th, 27th, 17th, 26th. He's good at running well at Daytona, but the finishes really haven't been spectacular recently at super speedways. Then dropping down to Austin Dillon, $10,300. He's starting in 27th, which I think makes him an excellent cash game play. I realize he's not all the way back in the 30s, but it's going to be hard not to play Austin Dillon in cash games this week. Now, I will say, in tournaments, there is leverage to be had to go underweight on these chalky drivers because these are the guys that are prone to wrecking. Like Kaz Gralla, Corey LaJoie, Landon Castle, those kind of guys. They know they're not going to win the race, more than likely. I mean, maybe one of them just tries to go all out and wrecks, but these are the kind of guys that are going to hang around the back and then try to pick up a good finish. Maybe not Kaz Gralla as much, but a guy like Corey LaJoie, Landon Castle, they're not here to win the race. They're just here to get a good finish. Austin Dillon, he needs to come out here and win the race to get into the playoffs. He's one of those drivers that needs to win to get in, and it can honestly be a wreckers or checkers kind of event for Austin Dillon. So that kind of scares me in tournaments. By starting all the way back in 27th, he typically runs well at Daytona. He's a former Daytona 500 winner. I mean, I think it makes sense to want to play some Austin Dillon this weekend. I just think the question is, do you want to go underweight or overweight on him in tournaments? Keselowski, $10,000. He won the most recent race at a super speedway at Talladega. And that's pretty good for him because he's been on a stretch where he just wrecks, it feels like, each and every single super speedway race. I mean, he's used to be one of the best super speedway drivers. then he started wrecking each and every single race, which, you know, some of it's no fault of his own. He just gets caught in the wrong spot at the wrong time, and he's one of those aggressive drivers that can make some dumb moves here and there, or just really aggressive moves. But starting in 10th place here, I think he's an interesting turn play. If he wins the race, I'd say there's a decent chance he'll be in the optimal lineup, so don't hate targeting Keselowski in tournaments. Same exact thing can be said for Kevin Harvick. He's $9,800 starting in 11th place. He just starts one spot further back, so I guess on paper, you'd want to play Kevin Harvick over Keselowski just because of that one extra spot. Plus, he has 2 top 5 finishes at Daytona recently. In the past 2 Super Speedway races, both in 2021, he's finished 4th place in both of those races. So I think Kevin Harvick is a somewhat decent play here in tournaments. Alex Bowman, $9,600. He starts 4 spots further back, and he's pretty much the same exact play as Keselowski. Kevin Harvick, he just starts a little bit further back. He tends to run well here, but he's one of those guys that can't get caught up in wrecks. But he's got a couple top 10 finishes. I don't hate Alex Bowman for tournaments. And we have Denny Hamlin here, $9,400. He's starting in 3rd. I actually think he's going to be one of the most interesting drivers to talk about this weekend because people are going to play Denny starting in 3rd. Like, we typically don't roster drivers starting inside the top 5 at a super speedway because it just does not make sense. You guys can look at the average DraftKings points scored per race for guys starting inside like the top 5, top 10 super speedways. It is typically not pretty. Although Denny Hamlin's kind of a different breed where he is amazing at Daytona and super speedways in general. Looking at the past 6 races at Daytona, he's got 2 wins, 4 top 5s, which is kind of insane. By far the most laps led per race. And starting close to the front, I would not be surprised if Denny Hamlin is the main lap leader in this race. The problem is fast laps are completely random, so you kind of lose out on half of those points. And he did wreck in Talladega earlier this year, which everyone thinks Denny Hamlin's always a lock to have a good finish at a super speedway, which last year he had an average finish of 2.4 at them, I believe, if I remember correctly. But anybody and everybody has an equal chance of wrecking here. And if people are going to play him in cash games this weekend, I think they're kind of stupid. I would definitely not even consider that. I'll play some Denny Hamlin in tournaments just in case he happens to win this race. I mean, he's the heavy favorite in Vegas to win, and I mean, if he leads like 40, 50 laps in this race and wins, yeah, he'll be in the optimal lineup more than likely, unless there's a lot of PD guys that absolutely smash and gain like 30, 25 spots. In that case, they'll outscore Denny Hamlin. But if I had to pick anybody that's going to lead a lot of laps in this race and win, that's close to the front, I would say it's Denny Hamlin. But starting in 3rd, I want to be underweight on him in tournaments. If he's going to be like, just for example, if he's going to be 30% owned, I'd probably want to be like 10 to 15% on Denny Hamlin, if that makes any sense. I don't think he's going to be quite 30%, but that's just an example of where I'd probably land on Denny this week because like there's so much risk starting in 30. Then dropping in at Eric Almirola, $9,300. He's starting in 19th. I will say he's a lot better at Talladega than he is at Daytona. Daytona, he just hasn't had quite the luck. I mean, if you're looking at his numbers, I mean, average running position of 21.8, average finish of 23.3, 8.3 DraftKings points per race with a 62 driver rating. Just hasn't been too pretty for him, but he's a good plate racer. Starting in 19th, I think he's worth a shot in tournaments. I mean, he has the most PD upside of anybody in the 9K range, so if I had to guess who I'm going to be highest on, I might be the highest on Eric Almirola, although I think Kevin Harvick and Alex Bowman will be pretty close to it. But I think Eric's definitely a good play in tournaments, but you got to be careful because he just has not had the best of luck at Daytona. Then Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, I think those are kind of easy fades there. If Kyle Larson wins the race, I would say there's a decent chance he still wouldn't be optimal because there's no PD upside. Plus, I can't imagine he'll come out and lead like 70% of the race. Like, he has no top 5s here recently, and he has 3 top 10s, which is fine. But if you're starting in first at a plate race, you still have to win. And there was an instance a few years ago where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. started in the pole, and he won, and he still was not in the optimal lineup. So I can't really see myself playing Kyle Larson. And people love playing Kyle Larson. They're going to see him at $9,000 in the pool. He is going to be owned this weekend. I would not hate a full fade. Like, you can get a lot of leverage just full fading Kyle Larson this weekend. I think that's probably a really good way to go. Dropping down to the 8K range, we have Kaz Grala starting in 38th. I think he's personally the best play on the entire slate here. He has legit top 15 potential. He finished 6th at Talladega earlier this year. Finished 28th at Daytona, but he was running a lot better than that, but he ended up having an issue. I want to say he caught on fire at one point. Finished 28th, but even then, if he finished 28th, that would be a pretty good day starting in 38th relative to probably a lot of drivers. But we'll see their scores be at the end of the day here on Saturday night. But starting at 38th here, I mean, we have top 15 upside. He's just not a lock play. I don't see how you don't play Kaz Grala. If I had to guess who my highest owned driver will be on the slate, I would say it's probably going to end up being Kaz this weekend. Then Ryan Blaney, Truex, and Elliott, they all start really close to each other, 5th, 6th, and 7th. They're going to have to win the race to have a chance of being optimal. I think the chances for that are low. If I had to pick, I think Ryan Blaney might be the best play of that bunch because he's a Penske car, and they tend to run very well at these tracks. And Ryan Blaney's been very close at winning Daytona before. He's good at Talladega. Starting in 6th. Again, he's going to have to win the race more than likely, but he might be worth a shot to play a few lineups in tournaments. Truex is like the worst plate racer ever. He does have 2 top 5 finishes at Daytona recently, but the guy just has like no luck at these tracks whatsoever. Look at the recent finishes for him. 31st, 25th, 23rd. Did have a 4th place finish at the 2020 Daytona summer race, but then 23rd and 32nd. Like, he just has a ton of bad luck. So I'll probably be out on Martin Truex Jr. here. I think he's probably a strong fade candidate. I'm going to play 5% just in case. I get it. Like, if I'm probably going to end up playing like at least 5% of most of these drivers starting close to the front, just in case, you know. Maybe besides Kyle Larson, because I just don't play the pole sitter at Daytona. I'm not going to do it. Then Christopher Bell here, $8,300. He's starting in 14th. I view him as a very similar play to guys like Kevin Harvick, Keselowski, Alex Bowman, kind of starting in that teens range where they're kind of like, I don't really want to roster the guy, but a lot of people are going to think the same thing, so I think they're going to be under owned, which is good for tournaments. So I'll have a little bit of exposure to Bell. Starting in 14th, he's going to have to get a top 5 finish, which is possible for him, but I don't know, he's not my favorite play in the weekend, that's for sure. Then we have Ross Chastain here, $8,200, another guy that could win and get in. Starting in 29th, I mean, he's going to be a wreckers or checkers kind of guy, because Ross Chastain is an aggressive driver. He's a wild man, and I'd be nervous if my drivers are around Ross Chastain on Saturday night. But pretty good at Daytona. He used to be in junk equipment though, so he used to ride around the back and then just at the very end pick up a good finish. It's not really the case now since he's in the 42 car, so we'll see how it plays out. I'm kind of nervous he's going to wreck here, but he's averaging 42 DraftKings points per race. Average finish outside the top 20. He has 2 top 10s. Like, Chastain's starting in 29th. I think he's a very overall safe and solid play. I have a lot of exposure to him, but I'm kind of nervous that he's going to end up wrecking out in this race. But same can be said for everybody. But Chastain's one of those guys that kind of gives me the willies. William Byron, $8,000, starting in second. I think he's a very good fade candidate. I know he finished second earlier this season at Talladega, and last year he actually won this race. But starting in second, like, it's not going to be good enough. I know he's only $8,000, but there's just no PD upside to be had. Dropping down to some PD plays, we have Daniel Suarez in 26th, Ryan Preece in 24th. Those guys are obviously both good PD plays. I will say, Ryan Preece starting in 24th, I like him quite a bit. He's actually pretty good at the super speedways. Looking at his recent finishes, 14th, 6th, 10th, did wreck out in 2020, finishing 37th, but then 15th and 29th. Like, Ryan Preece actually isn't half bad at Daytona and Talladega, and he really has nothing to lose, so I don't hate just playing some Ryan Preece just for the PD upside. Daniel Suarez has had some terrible luck at Daytona. He has 0 top 15s, 0 top 20s. He happens to wreck, it feels like, each and every single time. He has an average finish of 34th place. It's pretty ugly. People might skip over him just because of that, but it's really all just about luck, and I would say he's probably due for a good race. So don't mind Daniel Suarez. Kurt Busch, I can't really see myself playing Kurt Busch. He hasn't had the best of luck finish-wise. Average finish of 26.8, 8.6 DraftKings points per race, rank position of 22.3. He's just starting a little bit too high for me. I would much rather play Corey LaJoie, $7,400. He's starting in 33rd. I think he's one of the absolute best plays in the entire slate here. Averaging the third most DraftKings points per race of 43.6. Average finish of 15.5. 3 top 10s. He's kind of become the master at riding around the back and then picking a good finish once everyone wrecks. That's exactly what I want out of my drivers at Daytona. So Corey LaJoie, I think he's one of the best options on the entire slate this weekend. Tyler Reddick, $7,300. He is starting in 17th. I think he's the ultimate GPP play this weekend because similar to Austin Dillon, the RCR cars, they need to win and get it in. And Tyler Reddick, he is a guy that has race winning potential. Last year in the Daytona Summer Race for the playoff cutoff race, he was riding up front in first place with Kyle Busch. Kind of made a rookie block there. Ended up trashing both Kyle Busch and himself, and then caused the first wreck of the race, I believe, if I remember correctly. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, there's potential for him to win. He had a good finish at Talladega earlier this season, where he finished in 7th place. I don't hate him. I think he's a good tournament play. And he's definitely going to be lower owned, considering he's sandwiched right in between guys like Landon Castle and Corey LaJoie, who will have a lot of ownership this weekend, I would assume. And then dropping down to Landon Castle here, $7,100. He's starting at 39th, and I think he is arguably the best play on the slate here, safety-wise. Like, I cannot see Landon Castle, unless he has an engine failure on like lap 3. I think he's guaranteed going to gain like 10 spots in this race. Like, the guy just does not get DNFs at super speedways. He's really good at riding around and then grabbing a decent finish at the end of the race. He has 32 career starts at super speedways, only 7 DNFs, and I believe he has 10 top 20s, and he's completed over 91% of the laps. So Landon Castle is very, very consistent and good at just finishing these races. And if you finish this race and you're starting in 39th, you're pretty much guaranteed some pretty good points over on DraftKings. So I think Castle is a very, very good play, and you should definitely play him in cash games. And then dropping down to Ryan Newman, $7,000. He's starting in 23rd. He's typically a guy that I do roster at super speedways because he's pretty good at grabbing good finishes. We're looking at his numbers at Daytona. He's got a top 5, 3 top 10s, 4 top 15s recently. Looking for the most recent finishes, he hasn't had a couple of wrecks, which is kind of skewing his averages. But when he didn't wreck, 13th, 6th, and then 9th place. I think starting in 23rd, I don't think he'll be too high owned. He's right beside Landon Castle, Corey LaJoie guys that should garner ownership. So I think Ryan Newman's definitely a nice pivot in tournaments this weekend. Then Cole Custer, $6,800. He's starting in 25th. Not a guy I usually love rostering, but anyway that's starting in the 20s is going to be playable for DFS purposes this weekend. And the 2 super speed races we've had this year, he's finished 10th and 11th, so I think Custer is certainly in play. MDB, $6,700. He's starting in 9th. Probably going to be a wreckers or checkers guy. He did finish 5th at Talladega earlier this season, 33rd Daytona. He's got to win this race if he wants a playoff chance. So we'll see how it goes. The problem is he's starting in 9th place. It's going to be a tough path for him to be optimal, but if he happens to win the race somehow, that'd be actually really cool to see just as a fan of seeing MDB do well. I mean, I'm always rooting for the guy, but starting in 9th is definitely going to be a risky play here. I'll probably have like 10% ownership max on MDB this weekend. Then Bubba Wallace, Eric Jones, both guys are actually pretty solid at super speedways, so I'll definitely have interest in both starting right mid-pack. I think that'll keep their ownership a little bit lower, so in tournaments, I think these guys make plenty of sense. Bubba Wallace had a lot of speed in the last Daytona race, but he ended up wrecking, but he ended up finishing 5th at Talladega, so I think he's certainly in play. Eric Jones, usually a good plate racer, was running very well at Talladega earlier this season before he wrecked out. And then David Starr here, $6,200. He's starting in 40th. I usually just kind of like, not lock button the guy starting in last, but at least play a lot of ownership to the guy. The problem is I really can't trust David Starr having a super good race here. I think there's a solid chance he probably finishes like in the 30s. Like, I'll have some David Starr, but I do worry about his chances of finishing the race because obviously the equipment he's in is not exactly the greatest. The equipment doesn't really matter here, but I could just see him being one of those guys that kind of falls off pace, gets a lap down. I mean, you have a bunch of guys wrecks and he just happens to have a clean race. He could gain like 10, 15 spots if we're lucky. And then Ricky Stenhouse Jr., $6,000. He's starting in 12th, and I realize David Starr is starting in the very back, so he can't lose you any points whatsoever. And Ricky Stenhouse has a lot of downside here, starting in 12th, especially the nature of how he drives. But this is one of the best plate racers in all of NASCAR. He has one of the best average running positions in the field here at Daytona of 12.3, one of the best driver ratings. But finish-wise, it's been absolutely horrible. He has 0 top 5s, 0 top 10s, only 1 top 15, and 4 top 20s the past 6 races. Starting in 12th, we're going to need him to pretty much come out and come close to winning the race. I realize that price point's really cheap, so maybe he doesn't have to quite win it. But again, pricing really doesn't matter this weekend, so I don't really care that he's cheap. But the guy's a good plate racer. I think he's a really good tournament play, so I'll have exposure to him just because of that. I think he's a very similar play to Keselowski and Kevin Harvick and those guys, but he comes at half the price point. If Anthony Alfredo, $5,800, he's starting in 32nd. We don't have a big sample size of races for him at Daytona, so I'm not even going to look at this. But he did finish 12th at Talladega earlier this season. I think starting all the way back in 32nd. The front row cars typically kind of sell out for these super speed races. We saw Michael McDowell win the Daytona 500, and they typically run well. I mean, we saw the 38 car run very well at the plate races last year with John Hunter Nemechek. Anthony Alfredo had a good finish this season. Michael McDowell finished 3rd and 1st this year at both plate races, so I think the front row cars are definitely in play. Alfredo is definitely a viable cash game option starting all the way back in the 30s. Michael McDowell, $5,700, starting in 18th. He is super good at Daytona, averaging 46.5 DraftKings points per race. He has a win, which was the most recent Daytona 500, 2 top 5s, 5 top 15s. Finished 3rd and 1st, like I just mentioned at the plate races this year. I think his ownership is going to be pretty low, starting in 18th, although maybe not super low because, you know, he's the most recent Daytona winner. He's very good at plate races, but there's not a lot of PD upside to be had there. I wouldn't play him in cash games, but I think starting in 18th is definitely going to be a very good spot for tournaments this weekend because the guy just has good races at super speedways, and specifically he's very good at Daytona. Justin Haley, $5,500, he's starting in 28th. These numbers are skewed because of that summer race where it rained and he happened to be out front, so they called the race and he won. So it says he's averaging 61 DraftKings points per race and average finish of 7th here. I mean, doesn't really count, but he did finish 30th earlier this season. If he stays clean, he could challenge for a top 20. It's just a matter of avoiding the wrecks. Chase Briscoe, really not interested in Chase Briscoe. Like, he'll have very low ownership this weekend if I'm going to throw like a handful of percentages on him. And then Chris Buescher, $5,200, he's starting at 13th. I think he's a pretty good tournament play. So if Michael McDowell's going to be, I know I said Michael McDowell's going to have lower ownership, which he should, but compared to Chris Buescher, I assume he's going to be higher than Chris Buescher. So if you're looking for the pivot off of McDowell, he was already a pivot already. So if you're looking for the double pivot here, we have Buescher, 13th. Really good at Daytona, 2 top 5 finishes recently, 3 top 10s, and 4 top 20s. I know the starting spot's a little bit rough, but he has top 5 potential. He's only $5,200. I think he's certainly in play. And then these back markers, we typically skip over them, but at Daytona, you can certainly have interest in rostering these guys. Joey Gage, Josh Bilicki, Garrett Smithley, Cody Ware, Quinn Houff, BJ McLeod are all in play this weekend. If you're looking at their average finishes, 25.2, 31, 30, 32, and 27. That would pretty much be all positive PD for each and every single one of those drivers. If there is a bunch of wrecks and carnage and they all finish inside the top 25, these will be some of the better plays on the entire slate. And usually we see one of these guys kind of sneak inside the top 15 once the race is over. So if you can nail that guy, they're going to be pretty low owned. Usually we don't see these guys above like 10% in ownership. So don't mind rostering some of the scrubs this weekend because I assume there's going to be a lot of carnage with the playoff cutoff race. So if you want to roster the scrubs, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful. And if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you made it all the way through in the video, please let me know down in the comments below, because I do appreciate everyone that does listen all the way through. And if you guys want to follow me over on social media, or find me Chris Pennell 16 on Twitter, cpen16 over on IG. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, become an official member over there. Link is down below in the description for that if you want access to the optimizer, ownership projections, and all that good stuff. And if you do want to get this race for free, and you do sign up, if you say signed up on September 1st for the content for the following month, I'll hit that refund button for you so you can get this race for free and the rest of the week's content for free if you do sign up for the All Sports package. So football coming up, so a lot of fun things to be excited about. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks, and as of right now, I am offering Prize Picks projections and picks in my article and on my spreadsheet. As of right now, if you're new signing over on Prize Picks, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be pretty much it for the video, guys. I will stop rambling. I'll see you guys in the live stream on Saturday at around 5 p.m. Eastern.